Hey guys, I'm Nate. We've got something really fun for you today. A lot of you have commented saying that we should do something from the game Fortnite, and I thought what would be the best idea would be to build one of the weapons seen in the game. So this video is part 1 of 2 in building the Fortnite Rocket Slammer, which I thought was just the coolest looking weapon and I had to build it. To make sure this hammer isn't going to hurt anyone and so it's light enough to use, most of it's going to be made out of some EVA foam and a PVC pipe. I've got this chunk of foam which I've already sort of made into a hammerhead shape, and that's going to help me make the pattern out of the foam for the build. I made this using some of the same techniques that I described in our video where I showed how to make some large Mario Kart shells out of fiberglass. This is pink rigid insulation foam which is glued together and then shaped using a hand saw and some rough grit sandpaper. I've got a couple kinds of glue, a razor blade, a heat gun, some tape. I've also got my computer up on the counter which I'm going to be using to look at my reference pictures of the hammer. Let's get started. Let's start with this block that I've already carved into the general shape of a hammerhead. We'll cover this form in tape and then cut it off. Let's trim off the top and bottom of the tape and then use one vertical cut to remove it from our form. As we cut and remove the sheet of tape from around our form, we can see that it's very curved. We'll need to add a few more cuts in it to get it to lie flat on our sheet of foam. With the cuts added into our sheet of tape, we can now press it down onto the sheet to make it lie flat. Let's take a white marker and trace around our entire pattern down onto the foam. We can then remove the tape and cut along the lines that we've drawn. With our pattern cut out of the foam, we now need to glue together all of the exposed edges. I'm using contact cement, which I'm storing in a squeeze bottle with a small hole cut in the tip. This makes for a very easy application. As we start gluing together the pattern, we can see the form of the hammerhead begin to take shape. Once we've glued together all of the matching edges, our EVA foam hammerhead is looking great. Let's move on to making the face of our hammer. We can place what we've just built face down on a mat of more foam and trace around that with our white marker. To try and get our edges to match up nicely, we'll cut around this circle at a 45-degree angle. Let's trim the edge of the hammerhead at a 45-degree angle as well. Now the two pieces should meet nicely. By gluing those two pieces together, we have the front face of our hammer. To help prevent the head of our hammer from deforming, let's draw and cut out some shapes from a 1-inch sheet of styrofoam. The head of this hammer has one large 8-sided piece on top of a smaller 8-sided piece, which are both held a small distance away from this face we've already assembled. We'll cut out one of the small pieces and 2 of the large pieces, and then put those together. Because contact cement will actually dissolve styrofoam, we'll be using a hot glue gun to glue the styrofoam pieces together. By placing our styrofoam octagons down on sheets of foam, we can trace out just the right sizes to completely cover all of the styrofoam in the EVA foam. The center of this hammer's striking face has a domed circle on it. To get a curved surface, let's use our heat gun on a piece of foam, and when it's nice and hot, we'll try stretching it over a playground ball. The EVA foam can't stretch and shape infinitely, but we can add a little bit of contour if needed. This bowl has the right circumference for the circle we want to add onto the hammer, so let's use this to trace out a circle onto our curved foam. We can glue this domed circle onto the front of our hammer and we have our impact head. To add a little bit of space between the body of our hammer head and the striking face of our hammer head, let's glue together 2 sheets of EVA foam and then cut a circle out from them. Once this striking face is attached to the body of the hammer, it will be very difficult to do any cleanup work, so let's do that quickly now. A stone grinding attachment on a rotary tool does an excellent job of taking down sharp edges on EVA foam. And for filling in any gaps or scratches in the foam, we'll use something called gallery glass. It's a product designed to simulate the leading in stained glass. It does a great job of filling in gaps, and it takes paint very well. As a final preparation step before we attach the striking face of our hammer onto the body of the hammerhead, let's hit it with a heat gun, which will help seal the foam and make it easier to paint later on. With all of that prep work complete, let's use some more contact cement and glue the 2 pieces of the hammerhead together. Some of the next steps will require knowing where the handle will attach to our hammerhead. Our handle is going to be a PVC pipe, so let's measure and cut a hole for that. We can mark the foam by pressing the PVC into it just a little bit, and we have a clear line where we need to cut. We're not going to permanently attach the handle yet because it would get in the way as we work on the rest of the hammerhead. Just like with the front of the hammer, we will trace a circle that will be glued onto the back. We'll cut this circle at a 45-degree angle and trim the back of the hammer as well so that the 2 angles meet up nicely. Before we glue on that circle though, we'll build the rest of the back of the hammer onto it, as well as attaching our handle and reinforcing it inside the hammer head. The back of our hammer has a few different sizes of circles leading up to a conical piece that is the rocket at the back of the hammer. Let's trace out those circle pieces from foam and then glue those on. Before we glue some of these circles down permanently, let's use our rotary tool to smooth down the corners. To get a custom cone shape, we can either partially cut a piece of paper or partially tape two pieces of paper together. By overlapping the edges more or less, we can get a cone that is either more or less pointed. Once our paper is overlapped, to give us the shape of cone we want, we can tape it off and then measure the size of circle for the base of the cone. I'm going to use this roll of tape to measure because it happens to be just the right size of circle. This marker on top of a few stacked sheets of foam will give us a uniform height that we can trace around our cone. After cutting off the extra, I now have a conical strip of paper that should work as a perfect pattern. A quick cut gives us a nice flat piece of paper that we can trace out onto a sheet of foam and then cut it out. This cone shape on the back of our hammer has some panels along the sides of it that are the same size and shape, so we'll cut out a second one of these patterns as well. To make the side panels, we cut one of the two pieces of foam into 6 equal parts. A quick cleanup with our rotary tool gives us nice rounded edges. Let's glue all 6 of those panels around the sides of our conical ring. After a little bit more cleanup with our rotary tool, we're ready to glue that cone-shaped ring to the back of our hammer. The back of our rocket has a second cone shape extending off of the back of the first one. Let's use that same technique with a piece of paper to make a custom cone-shaped pattern. Once again, a roll of tape happens to be just the right size, so we'll trace off of that. Finally, the back of our rocket has another cone-shaped piece that tapers inward rather than out. Once again, a quick paper cone pattern to make that piece. A small flat circle in the middle of that cone finishes up the back piece. With that glued in place, the back of our rocket hammer is looking great. The rocket portion of our Rocket Slammer is now built, and as I said, we aren't attaching it yet until we've really secured the handle inside our hammer. But it's looking really good. It's looking really good. The front is looking really good, and so now we have 4 fins that we need to add going around the body, as well as 2 little energy pods with a cable coming out of them. I don't know what those are supposed to do, but they look neat. A rubber band stretched around the body of the hammerhead will give me a nice even line that I can measure from. Making these fins is going to take just a little bit of guesswork, so let's cut out what looks like about the right shape and then modify it as we go. We can hold our cut fin pattern up to the body of the hammer and see where it needs adjustment. Once we have the inside contour of the fin correct, we can draw in the outside shape. The shape of this fin is good, but the fins need to be a little bit thicker, so let's glue together 2 sheets of our EVA foam and then cut out 4 of this fin pattern. Adding these 4 fins is definitely going to make our hammer look more like a rocket. The sides of our rocket have 2 small pucks which seem to be glowing with blue energy. The surface of these pucks have 3 recessed cutouts, so for each one I'll cut out a circle and then remove the unneeded pieces from that circle. The circles with the removed pieces can then be glued onto the surface of some thicker pieces. Quickly going over the edges with the rotary tool smooths out the corners. Each of these pucks also has a small raised circle in the middle, which we'll just add with a thin sheet of EVA foam. Let's glue these 2 pucks onto the side of the body of our rocket hammer. This rubbery gas line hose should work really well for the cables that run from the little pucks on the side of the hammer up to the front of the striking head. We'll hit them with a heat gun to get the shape closer to what we want. At the end of our rubber hose, we want it to make a sharp 90-degree turn, so we'll cut a small notch into the rubber and then add some glue to make it hold that shape. The head of our rocket hammer is mostly built, so it is time to move on to the handle. The base of that is going to be this PVC pipe, which is just a tiny bit too long. I think you need to take just a few inches off of the bottom, but most of this handle is made up of a few different cones. The head of the hammer will fit this far onto this PVC pipe to really give it some stability. Then there's sort of a cone shape underneath that, a round cylinder under that, and then we've just got a good stretch of plain handle, and then we've got a flared cone here and a long tapered cone at the very bottom. Let's trim off the end of this, and then I've taken the liberty of making some of those cone shapes out of paper. We'll use those as patterns and cut them out of foam. A small ring of hot glue will hold the neck in place when I slide it up to the height that it's supposed to be. Below the cylindrical piece is another small ring, which will just be another small strip of EVA foam. The body of the handle is mostly one uniform thickness, but there are 2 recessed strips which run down the length of the handle, angled a little bit more toward the front. So we'll coat the rest of the handle in more EVA foam, leaving a gap where those 2 strips should go. There are 2 more cones that make up the bottom handle shape of our hammer, and we'll make those the same way we've made our other cones. A small donut-shaped ring can connect the opening of the upper, wider cone to the lower, narrower cone. We really want to make sure that our pipe is well attached to the inside of the head of the rocket hammer. So let's cut out some circles that will fit around our pipe and then glue onto the inside body of the rocket hammer to make sure that it's not going to move around as I shake and swing this thing. The PVC has support attaching it to the top and bottom of the inside of the rocket hammer body, but I want even more than that. So we've got these 2 pieces of supporting foam that will work as a sort of scaffolding on the inside of the hammer. With our support structure well installed inside the head of our hammer, we can now glue on the back rocket. With the hammer head attached firmly onto the handle, it's time to add the few pieces that connect the neck of the hammer onto the head. Once again, these pieces are thicker than a single sheet of foam, so let's glue 2 of them together. Because of where some of these supporting pieces attach, it's necessary to do a little bit of cleanup on the hammer head using our rotary tool. At this point, all of the pieces are added onto our hammer. There's nothing left to do as far as the build goes. Of course, this doesn't look like the hammer in the game because we haven't added paint to it yet. So there are some little details that will need to be carved into the foam, and then we'll go through a several step process to paint this whole thing up, but it is looking great. Hey guys, we've still got more for you to see. There's a little box at the top that'll transport you directly to our last video. Go check it out. The box at the bottom is the one that YouTube thinks that you should be watching next. And this bomb here in the middle will subscribe you to our channel so you never get left out again. Don't forget to ring the bell and we'll see you next time. Talk to you then.